The appeals are underway in the case of Ellen Greenberg, her parents now appealing to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court about that decision of the lower court earlier in the year that lacked legal standing to challenge the suicide ruling that made by the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office of suicide on a case and a crime scene that was never really looked at as a crime scene, despite someone being stabbed 20 times, half in the back and half in the head. It's a case that really defies a lot of logic. Bob Motta, defense attorney, host of the podcast Defense Diaries, is joining us right now to discuss all of that. This has been so twisted from the get-go, so many roadblocks, a lot of corruption in Philadelphia with the politics and the law. Where does this go from here? Is this just a losing battle at some point for those parents and they're seeking justice? Rightfully so, but it seems there's far more power beyond them that want to block them at every step of the way.
Yeah, and it's the question is why? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I mean, it's like you said, the facts don't beget the ultimate conclusion in terms of it being suicide. It's that concept is absurd
Hmm.
to me,
Oh,
you
it's
know. So like
absurd to
I
anyone.
can right. I
It's
mean,
physical
anybody with a
impossible. Yeah.
it's fit right. It's like I mean, I guess maybe stabbing in the like
You
maybe.
hit the brain a little bit and keep going.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
it's like no one's doing that.
No.
That's not how you kill yourself, you know?
No.
And especially like women tend not to kill themselves in violent fashion like that typically. That's not how they typically kill themselves. It's typically with pills or sitting in a car and letting the car run with the garage, I mean,
Mhm.
it's usually not in a violent fashion like that. Um, but you get to the issue of standing which they never even got to it. Like, I mean, that's the frustrating thing is they never got to the argument, because they just said, "Look, you don't have standing
Mhm.
to bring the claim," which legally they don't, but, you know, the law can change. So
Yeah.
it's getting appealed now, and, I mean, look, there's two avenues of hope here. It's one that the law would actually change that would create a limited standing in a situation like this for them to even bring like a case in court. I mean that's what standing means. Standing means that you don't have the ability because you don't have a stake in the game
Mhm.
to bring it into a court of law. You know what I mean? It's like that's what they're saying that they don't have standing to do that. And obviously it's hard for them to accept that, which and I don't blame them. But it's like everybody knows. It reminds me of like a case where the cops all know where somebody did it and they just don't have the evidence to get them. And they sit there. Those are the cases that haunt these cops forever
Yeah.
when they know who did it, but they just couldn't get the evidence to prove it,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and with this case, the weird thing is so much of the evidence either was not collected or what was collected, we're learning now, wasn't even looked at.
Right.
We're learning that the knife was never checked for prints.
Crazy.
The day after you had the uncle of her fiance coming in there, a very high standing attorney, going and taking out all of the digital equipment, where a digital footprint may have told us something, as we know that can be very damning these days. But none of these things were done. I mean, if we were to suddenly open up a case, a totally different case, and realize, oh my gosh, they never looked at this, they never looked at that, it's so suspicious. You'd think there'd be oh great, we let's do this now. But these things
Right.
just sit, and there's no reason for them to just sit, and it's being predicated on believing an absurd idea that she killed herself. And then that's just where it stops. If they can get that moved and get that bar moved to being a homicide, then there's more resources to investigate this further. But obviously, somebody does not want it to go that far.
So let me ask you this because I don't know the answer. Maybe you do. Did they preserve any of the evidence? Even though they didn't test it, is it still preserved to
I,
to
I
be tested?
I don't know the answer to that. I believe that they are trying to get access to the evidence right now. Their attorney is fighting for access to all of the evidence that's still being held by the Philadelphia police. It includes the knife that was in Ellen's chest, which was not fingerprinted, and surveillance videotape from the apartment building lobby and other public areas of the day of Ellen's death and the following days, and the complete record of the police investigation, including all interview statements, other police forms, evidence logs, Ellen's personal belongings like her diary, laptop, other electronics. They've all been sitting there in evidence, and no one has had a chance to access them other than those who took them.
Right. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And, and FOIA requests, I'm sure, have been
Mhm.
turned down left and right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way to try to access it. Yeah, it's a frustrating case, man. And it shows a fatal flaw in the system,
Mhm.
when you have something like this, because no one person or no one agency should hold this much sway
No.
in order to be able to shut down investigations or refuse to reopen something. I mean, that's what I just say. It's like we've got the hope that either the appellate court's going to go back and say, okay, well, we're changing the law on it. We find that they do have standing, and they'll have to carve out a little niche for it. But or you get somebody new in office that's willing to say, you know what, I can't in good conscience sit here and
Mhm.
allow this to happen. I like we're reopening the investigation, because that's why I was asking the question. It's like they're so anti-investigating what the hell happened in there and like re-looking at it that it makes me think that they destroyed all the evidence or
Yeah.
something.
I
Like
mean,
there has to be like a rational explanation as to why they're refusing to do it unless somebody's being protected.
well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it brings your mind to all kinds of different places, you
and it's
know?
yeah, it's very easy to go down those roads because that's what only seems to make logical sense. Are they protecting someone? When you look at that string of people connected, it does make a lot of sense. Is that
It
what's
does.
happening? I don't know. But why can't we at least look at this?
Right.
Because it was never even looked at correctly the first time because it was never investigated as a homicide the first time.
Exactly. They
So
did no investigation.
so why not just take us where the evidence leads? Take a look. And if it leads to someone that may be being protected, then that's where it goes. But obviously, if you're trying to protect someone, you're going to do everything you can to not let it get to that place on a lot of technicalities.
Exactly. And it's similar in terms of kind of the way I felt about the West Memphis 3
Mhm.
and the DNA that they found and them trying to come in, and that was the defendants coming in who had entered into an Alford plea, and the judge is like, "Look, you're out. Like you don't have any standing now. The case is over. You don't have any standing to come into court and request this." And I'm sitting there on Twitter hollering, "Well, why isn't there a law for the victims' families? Like they deserve to know what happened. They deserve a full investigation. If they have DNA, like I just like, and I've been a part of the system for 20 years. I cannot find a rationale that works for why we can't try to get to the truth.
Mhm. Well, I found it,
I mean,
yeah, interesting with the lower court even agreeing with the family, but ruling against that in itself was bizarre. Of you don't have standing, okay, but we agree. Like this is really messed up. There's a lot of things that were wrong here. I guess. I mean, is that just how it sits and that's where it stands? Because that's how our laws are right now. What needs to change uh,
that's what I'm saying.
legally
The
to?
court had nowhere to hang their hat.
Yeah,
They have to follow the law,
yeah.
and the law is very clear. They did not have standing to go into that court with a cause of action. Like they just didn't have it. It doesn't exist in the law. That's what I'm saying. When it gets up to the appellate level is going to have to say, okay, we have to carve out an exception
Yeah.
or some kind of niche for this in order in these types of rare occasions to give somebody some power to be able to come in on behalf of victims of crimes and to have standing to be able to try to get something done in a court of law, because right now it just doesn't exist. It really doesn't.
Why do they not have standing? I guess is another question. The parents, when you're coming in and saying, look at all these obvious glaring issues here. We are her parents. What makes them not have standing? I guess what qualifies as having standing?
Because you have to be a party to the action.
Okay.
That's how you have standing.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like even like the West Memphis 3, because their case was pled out, it was over. The court lost jurisdiction. They no longer had standing for a different reason.
Hmm.
but they did not have standing to come into the court. Like the court in that case where they had found, because of advancements in DNA technology, had found additional DNA
Mhm.
on the shoelaces of one of the kids, and it should be tested.
Mhm.
Like like the families all deserve to know if it's the West Memphis 3 that did it, okay. If it
Yeah.
wasn't, let's find out who it was,
Yeah.
or at least find out whose profile that is so that they can investigate it. And it's the same thing. Like here, you've just got parents that, just as unbelievable as it seems, they don't have standing to get into the courtroom because they're not a party to the action.
Mhm.
Now, if we were talking about a civil case and they were filing, and if there was a suspect, it's like exactly what happened with OJ. Yeah,
Mhm.
he was found not guilty, but the Goldmans then sued him in civil court,
Mhm.
even though he was acquitted in criminal court. They had standing, even though their son was dead, but
Mhm.
his estate was still there, and they were they came in on behalf of the estate, and the estate was the one using. So I mean, civilly they could do something, but because they did no investigation, there's no avenue.
Yeah. There
And like it's super frustrating, but and it's like one of those things where you see the warts of the criminal justice system, and kind of the flaws in the system as it exists now. And it's frustrating. It really is. And it's going to have to be ultimately just a lot of pressure
yeah.
being put on somebody that can make a decision to do the right thing here.
And
It's that simple.
they have filed a civil suit. The Greenbergs have filed a civil suit. It accuses specific law enforcement, prosecutors, and the medical examiner and officials of misconduct and of participating in a conspiracy to cover up Ellen's murder. There's
Yeah.
unspecified monetary damages that they're going for. Discoveries going on right now. Could something like this in the discovery of the civil suit lead to a criminal investigation into any of this? If there are findings that come to light that really point to a cover up or police not doing their job.
I mean, it could. It depends. It really depends on the discovery that they're going to allow in the civil case.
Hmm.
I mean, if I'm plaintiff's counsel, I'm going in there and arguing, look, we have to be able to look at this evidence
Hmm.
in order to prove our claim.
Yeah.
And whether or not, because in civil cases, just like in criminal cases, you have a right to discovery. You
Yeah.
make discovery requests. Now, that's going to be a big battle.
Hmm.
That's going to be like, I mean, law enforcement can't sit there and say it's an active investigation.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's typically we're not going to honor a FOIA request because it's an active investigation. It's their number one go to not tender information. In this case, they're not going to be able to say that
Yeah.
because it's not. I mean, that's the whole reason they're getting sued,
Hmm.
because they won't actively investigate it. So, I mean, in theory, in order to try to prove up their case, and they're asking for the actual investigation file to show what these people did not do.
Hmm.
I mean, the judge may rule, yeah, I'm gonna allow them to, like, it's a definitely a potential backdoor into it,
Yeah.
into getting that discovery. I mean, the question then becomes, what can they do with it?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they don't care about the money.
Hmm.
They're in this to find their daughter's killer. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And get him convicted, or her, whatever the case may be. But, I mean, it's certainly an avenue. It's definitely no guarantee, and that's going to be highly litigated, that aspect of it.
Yeah.
When it gets to that point, and I'm sure that that'll be a case because of the potential for it to actually blossom into, something that could produce evidence that would help them get somebody under arrest. It'll be one of those cases, a civil case, kind of like the Maya case, where
Hmm.
it's got a lot of interest, even though it's a civil matter, because of the potential ramifications of it. I'm sure it'll be televised, like when it gets to that point civilly,
Yeah.
you know.
Be
And I hope
interesting.
they get it. I really do. I feel
Yeah. I hope they get
awful
their
for them.
justice before they pass on. Just from getting older, because this has been going on for quite some time, and they certainly deserve it. Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you want more of our interview with our guests, be sure to check out our podcast, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Just search that wherever you download podcasts and press subscribe. Also, you can check out our YouTube channel for the full video version of the interviews as well, under the same name, Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Check it out, subscribe, binge, and enjoy. Thanks for watching.